Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We are delighted to have you with us today. You are joining us for this webinar that's being presented to you by Gary Ingemels on Modern Internal Audit, the Tools, Trends and Tech for 2025. My name's Lynn Hunter. I'm one of the training production team at Informa Connect Academy. And as I say, thank you very much for joining us. Just before we get started and I hand you over to Gary, I just want to take a few moments just to let you know about Informa, who we are, in case any of you are not aware of us. We're part of Informa, which is a FTSE 100 company, and we're a global business with a presence in more than 30 countries around the world. And we are actually the largest events, conference and training company in the world. So we have a lot of experience in training, in events, conferences, etc. And in this region, we've been doing that for over 30 years. So we do bring a lot of experience in this region as well. So just as a quick introduction to Gary, Gary is a professional trainer, facilitator and consultant in internal audit, enterprise risk management, and he's been a chartered member for over 25 years of the Institute of Internal Auditors in the UK and Ireland. And during this time, he's had an opportunity to train and give advice to hundreds of internal auditors. And this has really given him an insight into how challenges and opportunities are both very similar, but also very different for organisations across the world. And he's worked in areas such as the UK, the Middle East, the Caribbean, which must be lovely, the Caribbean, Europe and the USA. And so Gary, through all that work, he also possesses an ACCA, which is a certificate in internal auditing, and he's also got a BA Honours in business and completed a postgraduate certificate as well. So Gary is absolutely the right person to be sitting with us today and taking us through this content. So I will hand you over to Gary in just 1 second, just to let you know, Gary will be presenting the webinar. There will be an opportunity towards the end for questions and answers. So if you do have any questions, please pop them into the chat where I can see them, and we'll get through as many of the questions as we possibly can at the end of the session. So Gary, thank you very much. I shall hand over to you and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm always delighted as well to hear my introduction. It's makes me feel even more knowledgeable and experienced than I am. No, not possible. Okay, so thank you very much for that, Lynn. Much appreciated. So let me get on with it. Our time is precious. So today's program, we're going to a brief introduction about what I'm going to cover and some of the context of where we sit in 2025 in terms of internal audit, modern internal audit. We're going to look at some of the key activities, as it says there, around internal audit value, how we can build on that, on our reputation, on the service that we provide, the assurance and advisory services that we provide to organisations, and what that means in real terms, looking at some best practice aspects and some implementation of how we can deliver and continue to deliver. And it says in 2025, but 2025 and beyond, and we're looking at trying to future-proof the elements of our internal audit service delivery to ensure that not only do we maintain that level of recognition and support and reputation for excellence, but also become what we will be talking about, a strategic advisor to the organisation, particularly in terms of challenges that are currently and will be faced by organisations in the Middle East and North Africa region, looking ahead, particularly hopefully relevant to those areas where you work. So in terms of the introduction, I want to talk a little bit about some of the key changes affecting internal audit in 2025 and beyond, what that means in terms of our evolving role in the UAE and the wider region. So I've picked out elements of the United Arab Emirates Vision 2030 to use as an example, and how we can align ourselves, or the steps we can take to align ourselves to enable whatever our vision for our in-country vision is, to ensure that we remain relevant, and also some of the risks and challenges that are being faced as far as organizations are concerned, and how we can rise to the challenge from an internal audit perspective. So in terms of looking at in our current role in the region and the wider region, new and more severe risks, particularly around cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, and I'll be talking a little bit about both of those in a moment and providing some context as to why they are so significant to our current business operations and future business operations, looking at some of the different in-country transformation programs that are being developed and delivered across the MENA region, looking at skill sets of internal auditors, so gaining skills in data analytics, which aligns with the artificial intelligence, the cybersecurity aspects of the agenda, but also in terms of maximizing our engagement with stakeholders, really understanding, acknowledging, and then responding to the needs of key stakeholders within our organizations, particularly around some of the future technological advances that we are seeing in our organizations. And again, looking a little bit more inwardly towards internal audit, looking at our new strategies and processes, and innovative tools, approaches, skill sets that we will need to deliver an ongoing service excellence for our organizations. In terms of themes to consider, and looking across and at different businesses, different business sectors in the various countries in the MENA region, looking at economic, geopolitical uncertainty, climate change, sustainability challenges, ESG agendas that organizations are embarking upon or building upon, for those that have already got those well established, looking at cybersecurity, data privacy. As you can see, a number of key aspects, and I'm going to look at this from a slightly different angle in a few moments, in terms of the most common or those risk areas and areas of focus for organizations and also for internal audit, and understand how we may need to approach or revise our approach in terms of the assurances that we are providing as we go forward. So I will come back to talk about some of these key aspects that we want to consider, and certainly themes for businesses that we want to consider as part of our strategic plan, as well as our annual and individual engagement plans. So something that I will talk about, as I say, in a few moments as well. But in terms of looking at some of the key aspects in terms of, as an example, the Vision 2030 for the UAE, a combination of a number of big projects and transformation programs in place, looking at key initiatives around economic diversification, sustainability, the economic vision in Abu Dhabi for 2030, the UAE 2031 as well. And you can see from there are others that are contributing to the Vision 2030, but some of the key aspects in terms of diversification, sustainability, looking at growing the economy and diversifying the economy as well, all key challenges that will see transformation programs in organizations that will require transformation by internal audit as well. And combined with that, looking at some of the key risks that are being faced in terms of currency fluctuation, interest rates, financial markets across the globe that may be impacted by geopolitical events, risks associated with contracts, non-compliance, breaches, those risks that are common in our day-to-day operations, including supply chain disruptions or equipment failures, transformation programs bringing changes in laws and regulations that we are looking at how they may impact in terms of business operations, as well as the transformation itself as businesses transform, ensuring that any emerging risks are identified, assessed and addressed. Now, it's not internal audit who are going to be managing these risks. It's the organizations, the individual organizations within different sectors who, of course, will be managing these risks. But our role as a strategic advisor, providing facilitation and support in terms of ensuring effective embedded risk management across the enterprise, across the organization, absolutely key to continuing our relevance and continuing to provide that excellence of service that we're looking at providing as part of our annual and strategic plan, and more about strategic plan in a few moments. But in terms of that context and a lot of change, a lot of transformation, different challenges that we are facing, thinking about what modern internal audit looks like. And of course, as part of that, the Global Institute of Internal Audit, very recently, January 2025 was the go live date, if you like, for the Global Internal Audit Standards. And what I want to talk about here in terms of modern internal audit is some of the initiatives and challenges that we face, or we may be facing as part of that particular work. And you, no doubt, for those of you who are working in internal audit, will have identified or certainly be very aware of the changes, a transformation of the standards from the previous version back in 2016, looking at our 5 domains. One, setting out the purpose of internal auditing, ethics and professionalism of internal audit, what that means in terms of governance and governing our function, managing the function, and then performing internal audit. And don't worry, I'm not going to cover every single one of the new standards as we go through, but I want to look at that in terms of how that affects or may affect some of the delivery work that we're doing. And I then want to pick out some of those key challenges and look at it from a risk perspective, the risks that are being faced by organizations and what that means. So just briefly, in terms of setting out the standards across those 5 domains, purpose, certainly a new purpose statement was introduced in January with the new Global Internal Audit Standards, looking at the strengthening of our relationship with the board, particularly for the Chief Audit Executive or the Head of Internal Audit. One other key change was around the mandate of internal auditing and the need for a strategic plan. I've been delivering training courses in internal audit, as Lynn said in the introduction, for about 22 years now. It might be a little bit longer, but 22 sounds enough. And I've been advocating for internal audit functions to have a strategic plan for their internal audit department, aligned with the strategic plans and the strategic objectives of the organization. And certainly, you know, I was going to say at long last, but certainly now there is a requirement in the standards for internal audit functions to have a strategic plan. We'll talk briefly, I'll touch briefly on that in a moment. The other key driver, of course, for modern internal audit is to keep in line or attune with the risks that are being faced. And documentation or the risk in focus report that is produced by the Institute of Internal Audit talks about you know, what are the top 5 risks that your organization faces. We haven't got time to go through all of them, of course, but I just wanted to highlight some of the key aspects of risks that are being faced by organizations and what we need to do about it. And certainly cybersecurity and data security, as you can see in 2025, which is the navy blue line, very, very important. Over 85% of organizations see cybersecurity and data security as one of their top 5 risks. Aligned with that and increasing with that is the digital disruption and new technology and artificial intelligence, which it's transforming many of our operations at the moment. But it's not just about IT or information security focus. The challenge around human capital, in particular around talent management, retention, recruiting the right people, absolutely key. And then also increasing and significant to us, looking at that macroeconomic and geopolitical uncertainty. The other aspect of that, of course, and one that sits in the middle nicely there, the changes in laws and regulations, and in-country transformation programs will bring new laws, new regulations that we will need to adhere to. So there are some key drivers behind what we should be looking at as internal auditors. When we look at then, the top 5 risks looking ahead in 3 years' time, so just the next 3 years, cybersecurity, although falls back a little bit, as you can see, that is complemented or that is associated with digital disruption, where that's the significant increase over the next 3 years, particularly new technology and AI and what that means. We also have our human capital and macro and economic still there as key aspects, with actually an increase in some of the risk areas around climate change. The document that I'm referring to, the Risk in Focus document, is available for all members of the Institute of Internal Audit to download and view. There is one other aspect of that I just wanted to focus on, particularly in the theme of what I'm talking about in terms of tools and trends and tech for internal audit. It is the question that is asked of internal audit functions about where do you spend your time? Where do you spend most of your time? And the risk priority, as you can see there, is in the blue band. Where do we spend our time? And there are some clear gaps or differences in terms of the risk priority for the organization and where internal audit are focusing. For example, changes in laws and regulations is certainly a traditional or a very conventional area for internal auditors to look at. It's very important, of course it is, but there may be other areas if we are looking at a risk-based approach where more time should be spent. We spend our time on business continuity, operational resilience, absolutely key to the organization, but are we spending more time in those areas than the risk would indicate is necessary? Our organizational governance and corporate reporting, a significant difference in terms of the risk around that and also where we spend our time. Quite an interesting one and quite an interesting slide, this one, in terms of where we spend our time against what the significance of the risk is or the severity of the risk might be. We also think about those gaps. So looking at those areas where there are significant gaps between the risk priority and where we spend our time. And I don't present this to indicate that we're not planning correctly, but certainly when we're putting our plans together for periods ahead, whether it's a strategic plan or an annual plan, there are key areas where maybe we should be spending a bit more time. And certainly the internal audit teams that I advise across the world, this is one of the conversations that I like to start. And there are often justifications for spending time in areas where maybe the risk isn't, but because of mandatory requirements or regulatory requirements. But certainly I think it's a conversation worth having with organizations. And that sort of leads me into some of the challenges that we have. So cybersecurity risks and challenges. Certainly information security and cybersecurity, it's been the top risk in that survey and in a number of surveys that you will see online for a number of years. Where those key threats are coming from and understanding what they are. And in at least 2 of my training courses, we spend some time deep diving into what the threats are, what's the response from the organization, what can internal audit do to help. Increasingly, artificial intelligence is something that my clients, and both in terms of those that I'm training and also those that I'm working with, are talking about. The amount of research investment in research that there is in artificial intelligence. Incredible. It's not new, but what new is the pace of change. And certainly, even if we look at our own everyday lives, the amount of change that we've had just from our mobile phones, and the way that we interact, looking at different technologies that have been developed and are continuing to be developed. And it's a list of technologies that I need to keep updating, because it seems that almost every day there is something else out there. And we talk about machine learning and deep learning, looking at natural language processing, which has been something that programmers have been looking at for a number of years. But the advancements in NLP, enabling us to enable systems to understand and interact with our own selves, with I was going to say with human beings, but I am a human being, so probably should include that. And how voice activated platforms have developed and exponentially improved in recent years. And the amount of usage of artificial intelligence now from chat support, chat GPT I've got there. We're looking at self-driving vehicles, soon to be out there, online search engines, social media, virtual assistants, quite hard to find a human sometimes in certain industries. Oil and gas companies increasingly using robots and robotics, particularly in those areas where there is danger. There are media companies looking at how they recommend. I don't have to tell anybody about Netflix or Amazon Prime, and we think you'll like this, and actually they're right. I will like it. So there are other ways and other tools, and once again, many new initiatives looking at automating the world around us. The internal audits have been conscious of for a number of years. It was back in 2018 that the Institute of Internal Audit talked about our role in artificial intelligence to help an organization evaluate, understand, and communicate the degree to which artificial intelligence will have an effect, negative and positive, or all positive, on the organization's ability to create value in the short, medium, and long term. And although it's 7 years old, I still like the quote. I still think that it is about enabling and supporting the organization, helping the organization excuse me, understand the strategic objectives of the organization, the processes, evaluating whether AI activities are accomplishing their objectives. In particular, providing this assurance over the risks that have been identified and assessed in terms of artificial intelligence, and a trusted advisor. So supporting the adoption of AI, not resisting, but certainly supporting the adoption of AI, where it will improve business process, the way we interact with our customers and our suppliers, and improving our service offerings and the products that we are selling. And building on that is the increasing use within internal audit as far as data analytics is concerned. Just excuse me one moment. Again, lots of different definitions of data analytics in terms of this process of collecting, analyzing data about a subject to help make better decisions, and then stretching that out, expanding on that in terms of this process of inspecting, cleansing, transforming, and modeling data to present meaningful information from what is often now many different sources of data that will suggest conclusions and support risk-based decision making. And for internal audits, we can look at using data analytics in terms of increasing our coverage, enhancing the assurance levels because of that deeper insight that we've identified through covering more records, more transactions, that as part of our testing program, and thinking then as well in terms of detecting fraud and errors and preventing fraud within the organization as well. And there have been tools for data analytics and internal audit that been in use for a number of years. Two particular analysis tools that I use, IDEA and ACL. IDEA, a really powerful data analysis tool, specifically designed for auditing, accounting, and finance professionals. Been using it for a number of years. The intuitive nature of the platform again has improved significantly over the time that I've been using it, and we can use it for transaction testing, duplicate payments, fraud detection. Very, very helpful. ACL, again, very, very good in terms of a data analysis software for internal audit, and enabling us to look at inventory reconciliations, continuous monitoring in place as well. And when we look at interrogation tools for databases or for systems, there are others that may be in use. And if you use Power BI or Tableau as part of some of your relationship management software in the organization, there is functionality there that we can also use. So there are, as I say, a number of different tools at that stage. And there are, again, common uses for data analytics in internal audit. I don't have the time, unfortunately, to go into too many of those, but looking at compliance, looking at fraud, looking at operational performance, internal controls and the effectiveness of internal controls, against a number of different audit activities that we can undertake. The other aspect, and again, any questions, I'll pick questions up at the end, as Lynn said. When we're looking at internal audit value and what that means, we have a mandate within internal audit to think about or to identify our authority, our role, and our responsibilities, and the responsibilities in terms of the types of audits that we're undertaking, and what that means in terms of alignment with the Global Internal Audit Standards. One of the interesting documents that came out quite recently across in the field of internal audit was a document called Vision 2035. Again, if you haven't seen it, it's a really interesting read. It's actually looking at where internal audit may be, as it would suggest, in 10 years' time, looking at some of the potential developments within internal audit, and particularly aligned with the future that's been shaped by technological innovation, looking at the role of internal auditors evolving to that of strategic advisors. There will still be a need for assurance provision, of course. That's our core raison d'etre. But because of the nature of the way that technological advances will enable us to do our testing, our field work, and put our reports together, and some reports are now being written using artificial intelligence tools, it means that we have the opportunity to provide this strategic advice and this strategic advisor roles, particularly across our interconnected systems, offering real-time assurance and advisory consultations through, as it says there, virtual and augmented reality environments. And one of the things that so that's 10 years time, or that's the vision for 10 years time. But here and now in 2025, thinking about my own reputation or our own reputation for building relationships, meeting or surpassing stakeholder expectations, we talk about two key words in 2025, introduced not solely by the Global Internal Audit Standards, but talk about insight, capacity that we have now to gain an accurate and deep understanding of what is happening in our organizations and providing assurance over that. And then thinking about foresight being what's going to happen, and the ability to, as it says there, to accurately predict outcomes of proposed decisions and actions. It involves looking forward, considering what is coming next. And the foresight that we provide as internal auditors, we've identified through our insight what's happening now, and our foresight is how can things be improved? What steps can the organization take to improve that particular activity? And one of the tools that we can use to support that is our strategy. Thinking about the fact that we need now, and it says in the standard, as it says then, standard 9.2, that the chief audit executive must develop and implement a strategy, supports the strategic objectives and should be very much aligned to the strategic objectives of the organization. And that gives us an opportunity as internal audit functions, to look at our own vision, our own strategic objectives and initiatives for our function. But it also means that we will understand the relevant objectives of the organization, what the key risks being faced by the organization, maybe embrace some of the aspects of Vision 2035 that I referred to on the previous slide. Think about metrics, think about the people that we have in our internal audit team, and with the skills and understanding the skills, knowledge and experience that we have within our teams, and also how we can build upon those to continue to deliver assurance that meets the needs of the business. And certainly the strategy sets out a roadmap that we can follow, that may need to be updated as we go and as things change within our organizations, but providing those three core elements of value that we offer an organization: assurance to the organization, comfort or discomfort in terms of what that means, what we found in terms of the governance, risk management and control processes, providing insight in our role as assurance providers, but also as the trusted advisor, the strategic advisor, not just at top level of the organization, but at all levels within the organization, and doing that in an objective way that is evidence-based, that can be relied upon by the business, not to be swayed by political concerns or by power structures and power and influence within the organization, but standing up for what we believe, and having the confidence and the courage to do that. And one of the ways in which we can continue to deliver the challenging agenda that we have as internal auditors is to develop an agile mindset, thinking about looking at the way, and when I say looking at, really taking a review of how we deliver our services. Are we continuously learning? Is the work that we do undertaken in a quality conscious way? How do our teams work together and interact? Lots of aspects around agile and agile project methodology can be applied to internal audit. And one of the newer courses that I deliver with the Informa Connect Academy is actually about how you can make your audit process and your audit delivery more agile, faster assurance with less resource. And yes, it's a challenge, but it's a really interesting concept, looking at how we can be more agile, not just in terms of a project methodology, but in terms of the flexibility of approach that we have to deliver the assurances that our organization needs. And the last thing that I really just wanted to touch upon was thinking about best practices and implementation. I've talked a bit about artificial intelligence, the way that we might change our role, but looking at how we measure our own performance. Do we have quantitative performance measures that look at rates of completion of audit plans and individual audit engagements? Do we look at number of recommendations made and accepted and cleared? Yeah, absolutely. And that they are still vitally important to demonstrate progress of our process. But we also need to be considering qualitative performance measures, looking at board satisfaction in particular, and organizational satisfaction with our performance. They look at feedback from stakeholders, looking at efficiency of our internal audit functions, focused a little bit more on outcome of what we've found. How have things changed through the work that we've been doing as internal auditors? Not just how much of the plan have we completed, what has the impact of that completion been in terms of value that we are adding or we are providing to the organization. Also, as part of our development into a strategic advisor, improving communication with stakeholders at all levels, and then developing our talent and recruiting talent that will future-proof delivery. So looking at the skills that your organization will need and the technologies that your organization is advancing towards, do we have the internal auditors with the skills there? And if I'm sitting here thinking, well, I don't know anything about cybersecurity, that's what a strategic plan is for. Certainly to look at how I can develop my resource into key areas. It might be, of course, that it's about innovations in the way that my financial services organization is developed, or my oil and gas company are developing. How do I make sure that the talent that I have in my internal audit team are are at the cutting edge, investing in that talent. And one of the really interesting parts of talent investment and talent management, effective talent management. So when I'm talking about talent management, I'm talking about the people that we have within our internal audit teams, is that often takes care of the issue around turnover, because valued people want to stay in the organization that is showing them value. And one of the aspects of the Vision 2035 talks about our ability, looking at our ability to enhance an organization's capacity will mean that we need internal auditors with competence, full support of stakeholders to navigate those new risks and the changing audit landscapes with confidence. And that's not just about attending training courses, but of course, selfishly, I would love you to attend my training courses, but it's also about exposing our internal audit talent to the different operations within the organization. So looking at talent, performance, delivery, stakeholder engagement, thinking about activity-based and results-based metrics that enable us to understand and move away from the purist yes/no perspective to being more proactive, to embracing new ideas, new ways of working, driving change that creates value. It doesn't mean cutting corners or not providing the level of professional service that we are providing now, but are there ways that we can be proactive? So rather than waiting in terms of, we'll do an assurance review around that particular area, what can we do to enable the organization to already be achieving high standards and high quality in its risk management, its control in the parts of the business that we are going to focus on. The other next steps is what I've just been talking about, revolutionizing talent management to attract, retain, develop future internal auditors and future internal audit leaders within our organizations, at the same time embracing those new technologies and innovation to add more value to the organization, and at the same time becoming more efficient, effective and potentially economic in terms of how we deliver our service. And just one minor last point really on tools, and there are lots of tools supporting internal audits delivery, and certainly internal audit changing or transforming its role to a more strategic advisor perspective. Do your own research, absolutely. The key absolutely is research. I said absolutely twice there, so it must be. but there are lots of companies, they will provide demonstrations. In my recent work, I've seen 3 examples of really good systems. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm not recommending them. I'm just observing the audit board, who have spent a lot of time developing a really good system specifically for internal audit called Ops Audit, but it's part of a comprehensive package. IdeaGen is another really good system that I've seen. And another system that I actually experienced probably 20 years ago that has really evolved, and I saw it about 3 months ago when I was doing some work for an organization, is Teammate, now owned by Wolters Kluwer. But there are lots out there, as I say. There are lots of really good systems in place that you can look at, your vision for internal audit, what that means, and how we can operate. So a number of key aspects in terms of what you might want to understand or might want to take advantage of as part of tools, to help you, keep pace with some of the changes that are happening within organizations. Lynn gave me 40 minutes. I think I've taken 40 minutes because Lynn took 3 minutes at the beginning of the time. We will have questions in a moment. I do have a couple of slides that while we're doing questions and answers. One is my courses that I've got coming up from now until the rest of the year. And I'll leave that for a few seconds, and then colleagues at Informa have very helpfully identified a QR code that you can go and search online on the website, and some links and contact details as well, which I will show in a moment. But I will pause there, and I shall see if we have any questions. I don't know if Lynn, you're going to. Yeah, Lynn's here.
Yep.
Okay, Lynn, go for it.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting, and a lot of information for the 40 minutes that I gave you. So thank you. That was a lot to take on board, but really, really interesting. Some great points there. So yes, we do have some questions. So if I will read them out to you and you can answer, that would be fantastic. So first of all, we have Ahmed, who has asked, and if anybody has some questions, please feel free to type them into the question and answer page, and I can read them out for Gary. But first of all, we have Ahmed, who's asked, how can internal audit maintain independence and objectivity when auditing AI systems that consistently evolve and learn?
Yes, so it's an interesting challenge. So firstly, I always separate independence and objectivity. So they are two absolutely essential elements that separate internal audit from other assurance providers, either internal or external. And I'm sure Ahmed, you know all about the 3 lines model. So yes, we sit in the 3rd line. So firstly, independence. Independence is maintained through our reporting lines. So that is absolutely something that won't change. So if there is an audit committee as a functional internal audit unit, we will report directly to the audit committee and then through to the board. The standards talk about actually directly to the board, but an audit committee as a subcommittee of the board fulfill that role. That's where we will get approval for our mandate, our charter, our plan, our resource plan, our strategic plan that we're now all going to be putting together as well. In terms of objectivity, and I look at objectivity as being evidence-based. So when I'm looking at providing my assurance around AI systems that continuously evolve and learn, it's objectivity is about what is that system doing, what is it telling me, what have I seen, what have I tested. The challenge, of course, is that by the time that I've in a traditional internal audit approach, by the time I've put my engagement plan together and agreed my terms of reference with the client, things have changed, so I need to revisit it. So that's where actually it's one of the things that would support objectivity and the timing of my work would be a more agile approach. So looking at some of the agile fundamentals, having having reviews that consist of 1 week sprints rather than 6 weeks of field work, where by the time I get to week 3, things have changed. We're not there in all parts of our business yet, where systems go on and deliver, but there is a challenge there. But the key on objectivity is absolutely about being free from bias, free from undue influence, supported by our independence and that positioning within the organization, but seeing where the evidence takes me. And I think that's something that will be an ongoing challenge. It's quite straightforward for me to answer that in the way that I've just answered it. It will become more challenging. And I think one of the things that we want to, or one of the elements of internal audit delivery, that when we I talk about strategic advisor or providing advisory services, there will still be a core role of internal audit to provide assurance. And I think that's something that we need to be very passionate about, but also as your question leads me to, we also need to be protective of that as well.
Fantastic, thank you, Gary. We also have Mahmoud, who's asked a question. Says, for CAEs who are already CIAs, CFEs, CISAs, what kind of certificates, programs, etc., should they target to obtain for being aligned with such revolutions in the aspect of where we're living now?
That's a really interesting point, and I know that certainly if you are CISA, so you have a certificate in information systems auditing, or a certified internal auditor, or a certified fraud examiner. I think those are the 3 acronyms. I just wanted to demonstrate that I knew what I was talking about a little bit there. Yeah, so there are lots and lots of training courses out there, or training certifications out there. I mean, we do as part of I deliver with Informa, so as you can see, a number of certifications, but there are other tools, and the CIA I know are working on a number of approaches. As Lynn mentioned this morning, it wasn't that long ago, only about 45 minutes ago, I've got a certificate in internal audit leadership, a certificate in international auditing as part of ACCA, and ACCA provide some other quite short time focused training courses. What I would do is I look at organizations like ISACA, keep looking at CISA and CIA, and see what developments come on there. And one of the challenges of all trainers in any aspect of business delivery in 2025 is, how do I keep pace with the change? By the time we've updated a slide, it's gone. And I had a list of some aspects in terms of the tools used around AI. That's probably changed today as more innovation happens. One of the other aspects of that is, if you look at, I mentioned Audit Board, they run seminars and conferences. Informa Connect Academy runs seminars and conferences, not just for internal audit, but also for technological advancements. So start there, I should say, otherwise Lynn might tell me off in terms of what's happening, and then broaden your search.
Thank you for that. We've got a couple of other questions here I think we might have time for. So the first one, Bawish, how should internal audit adapt its risk assessment approach in response to emerging risks like cybersecurity and ESG?
So in terms of the maturity of your risk management system, I think that's the first point. Sorry, I didn't catch the first name. So in terms of the first step is, how is your organization responding to emerging risks or new risks that are being faced. How are they identifying? How are they measuring? How are they responding to those risks? One of the things and one of the things we talk about on my certificate in enterprise risk management course is about then it's not about necessarily internal audit doing that risk assessment. It's about ensuring that the business has a framework or a system in place like ISO 31000, which has been which is a tool that you can use, or the COSO implementing with strategy and performance model. Many other frameworks out there, but they're two that I'm very familiar with. And when we look at what the organization are doing, internal audit can be facilitating. That's really an area that I spend a lot of time with organizations and with internal audit teams about how can we get the most benefit from the organization's investment in a risk management system and the risk management approach. If the organization is experiencing new risks, or there are emerging risks, it's really useful as a partnership with the business to help them understand, help them use some tools to identify what those risks are, look at how we are measuring those in terms of impact and likelihood, and what that means in terms of our risk appetite. So if there is an established system, internal audit should be exploiting the benefits of what management have done and building upon that with our expertise around cyber security or artificial intelligence risks to the organization. We should also be advising about programs or objectives that have been that are being changed or being considered changing in terms of our business delivery and what new risks are potentially being faced there as well. So continually updating, continually reviewing, particularly what those risk assessments are, but also what the business are doing about it, and whether or not the action taken by the business will actually reduce the impact and or likelihood in the way that they think it should do. So evaluate is probably the answer to that one.
Thank you very much. There's one question here that I can answer, and then I'll give you one question for you. So Matthias just asked if there's CPE certificates, but yes, we do offer CPE credits with the courses that Gary delivers. And then there's a question here, which I think will be just based on time, will be our last question. This is quite specific from Mohammed. Would you like to discuss and share the most specific objective for donor-funded organisations? As a project financial auditor, my prime objective is to ensure that fund is utilised for the intended purpose. Best tools to verify the partner's financial data.
It's not an area that I'm particularly familiar with.
Okay.
So it's probably one that how can I get in contact with that person individually?
If Mahmoud, if you're happy for us to share your contact details with Gary, I'm sure we can reach out and see if we can give you some information on that. If that's okay, Mahmoud, if you're still there. Yes, he's saying yes. So
okay, I've got 3 minutes left. I don't think I could answer it in 3 minutes anyway.
Okay.
In that specifics, but yeah, I'll drop you an email a little bit later on today, and we can have a conversation.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much for that. There is one more question.
Yeah, go for it.
We might have time for. How can confidentiality be ensured when conducting audits in highly sensitive sectors? And that comes from Sayaf. Yeah,
so there are a number of, confidentiality is absolutely key to internal audit, as you know, which is probably why where the question comes from. We're looking at, I was doing some work for a very sensitive part of UK government about 12 months ago, and my non-disclosure agreement is that that's all I can really say. But in terms of how we maintained it, they used offline systems in a protected net. So we had to go and do the audit work within that particular that particular function. Because of cyber risk and because of the risk that around data and data governance, we certainly need to make sure that we're following the regulatory requirements around data protection and data protection regulations. Loss of data or a slippage of some of that information can destroy internal audit's reputation. So something that I'm very precious about. So it's really about categorization of the data, of the information. If it's highly sensitive, highly confidential, we need to make sure that we've got the right parameters, the right steps in place in terms of how we're going to get access to the data, who's going to have access, and it might be that it's because of where it is in the organization, maybe some additional security, some more additional physical or biometric security, so that only those who should can actually get access. If it's something which is absolutely key to delivering my internal audit engagement, I will need to make sure that I follow the protocols that have been set out by the organization. And if there aren't protocols set out by the organization, that's my first recommendation, that we shouldn't just be giving people access as we go. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Gary. That was perfect timing for the answer of that question. So thank you very much, Gary. As I say, again, thank you so much for all that information. That was really, really interesting. Everybody can see there's a QR code on the screen now. If you'd like to scan that QR code, that will take you. So Gary already provided a list of training courses that you might be interested in over the rest of the year. The QR code will take you to those courses as well as some other ones as well. But just thank you everybody for attending, and Gary especially, thank you so much. There's some really, really great information in there that I'm sure everybody's thinking about and churning over. So thank you very much. We really do appreciate your time, and thank you everybody for attending. I hope you found this webinar useful and some great content in there as well. So thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.
What if you and your team can be even more informed, competitive, accomplished, even more successful, with programs designed to inspire and empower everyone to become even more. Introducing Informa Connect Academy. With hundreds of global, digital, and in-person training courses led by world-renowned industry experts, reimagining learning experiences for even more unlocked potential. Informa Connect Academy, available at informaconnect.com/academy.